nation. About a few seconds for once you are coming settle down so that you can share with us.
Walkie-talkies are good.
Right. Let us pray together. Our God and our Father, we stand in your presence, grateful to you for Daystar University and grateful to you for this opportunity to be here for this conference. And as we hear your word this morning, Father, we ask that you minister to us, you wish for the honor and glory of your name, and so that we may learn from your word this morning, others. In Jesus' name we pray. Good morning once again. My name is Rachel and I'm here to just share a short devotion. This is our tradition as Daystar University, and as we begin our conference this morning, I was thinking about how this conference is about research, and of course, research is very essential to any institution of higher learning. And I couldn't help but think about the word of God that talks about wisdom. And when we think about what research is all about, it's about wisdom. It's about gaining wisdom, sharing knowledge, and helping one another understand our world that we live in better, what we can do to make it better, and grow together. And so I thought about Proverbs chapter 8 that talks about wisdom, and this is what it says, a very interesting portion of scripture. It says from verse 1, does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? In other words, we don't need to look far for knowledge, for information. In this day and age, we live in a global village. Information is available anywhere. And so it says, does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way, where the paths meet, she, wisdom, takes her stand beside the gate leading into the city. At the entrance, she cries aloud, to you, O people, I call out. I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple, gain prudence. So wisdom is calling out on us, and I find that portion of scripture very interesting. That even if we are not looking, even if we are not seeking, wisdom is calling out. In other words, we will be unwise to not look, to not go for it, to not answer the call. And I believe each one of us is seated here because we have come to answer that call. The call by wisdom to receive it, to gain it, and on the portion of that Proverbs chapter 8, actually to the very end, talks about this is what you will gain if you answer that call. So if we are not here to learn, we are here to teach, we are here to gain from one another. And the Bible says that iron sharpens iron. We are here to sharpen one another. God desires for us that we actually do that, we learn from one another, because He desires that the way He has wired life is that we learn from one another. None of us knows everything, but everybody knows something, and we can learn from one another. So where does wisdom come from? Where does it begin? I submit to you that it begins with God. Only God gives wisdom. The Bible says in Proverbs 9:10, and that's one of several other portions of scripture that say the same thing. That the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through wisdom, your days will be many, and years will be added to your life. Again, the reason why we need to answer to the call for wisdom, or the call that wisdom is beckoning us to. And so the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We will do a great, and you'll see in a bit why. It will be a great undoing for us to try and gain wisdom to then know God. God is wisdom. That's why it became the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the reason I say we can do it the other way around, we can seek for wisdom wherever, is because the Bible describes two kinds of wisdom. And I'm finished with that. James 3 from James chapter 3 from verse 13 to 16 describes, actually verse 13 to 18 describes the two kinds of wisdom that we find here on earth. So we can choose. We can choose whichever way we want to begin this. Seek wisdom, then maybe try and find God, or find God and therein find wisdom. So James 3:13 to 16 describes the first kind of wisdom. Who is wise and understanding among you? It says, let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. And then it describes the earthly wisdom. It says, but if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom, and it's put as quote unquote, does not come down from heaven, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. And I'm reading this list because isn't it our present world today? Don't we see all these things so present in our world today? So much bitterness, so much envy, so much selfishness, so much selfish ambition, actions, or people doing things out of seeking to gain for themselves. And then what do? They actually boast about it. And the Bible says that's not wisdom from God. It is earthly, it is unspiritual, it is demonic. But then scripture gives us what's the better option and says this kind of wisdom does not benefit anybody. It says in verse 17 and 18, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, it's peace loving, it's considerate, it's submissive, it is full of mercy and good fruit, it is impartial and sincere. And then it finishes by saying, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. I want to believe that this conference is about that. That we are here to gain wisdom from God's point of view, because whatever knowledge we gain, He will give us the know how to translate it into wisdom. We call wisdom knowledge that is put into practice. So that then we will experience the so desperately desired peace across our world today. So we are looking for peace that is pure, that wants the good for everyone. That the information we gain today will go out and put it into good use, that it will be of benefit to someone else, that it will bring peace in our world today, that it will be considerate of others, that it will be submissive, that it will be full of mercy, that it will bear good fruit, and that there will be partiality and sincerity as we do that. I pray that God will help us to make good use of the next 2 days in all that we learn, so that we will be the catalyst for the kind of wisdom that God wants the world to have. If we had it God's way, that's what we would have. We would have sincerity, we would have good fruit, we would have purity of mind and of heart, and all the gifts that we read. So I pray that this will bear good fruit for the glory of God and for the good of our world today. May God help us. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you so much once again. Thank you for your word. And Lord, we pray that as we learn what we will learn from this conference, that God, you will help us, most importantly, to understand it from your perspective, And Lord, our prayer is that it will be the God kind of wisdom that you desire us to have, that will help us to go out and make a difference. So we pray for every speaker, every facilitator, every discussion, every question that will be asked and answered, Lord, everything that we will do in the next 2 days. May Lord you bring the God kind of that you desire us to have. And so we commit this conference into your hands and ask that you come and glorify yourself in it. And Lord, as you're lifted high in it, Lord, may you cause our lives to be everything that you desire them to be. We pray your blessings over everyone that will be doing anything in this conference, speaking or facilitating in any kind of way. May your grace and your blessings be upon us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
The Vice Chancellor, Daystar University, Professor Peter Laban Airo, Attorney General Emeritus, Professor Githu Muigai, and Chair of the Council of Legal Education, Professor Elizabeth Bukusi, who is the Senior Principal Clinical Research Scientist at Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics, Research and Student Affairs, Professor Faith Nguru, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Finance, Administration and Planning, Professor Muturi Washira, members of management and Senate, directors, administrative staff, students from the various universities, University of Nairobi, Mount Kenya University, and our very own Daystar University. Other guests, Shalom. My name is Maurice Ajuang Owuor. I'm the Dean of the School of Law, and I take this opportunity to appreciate the honor and privilege which has been conferred on the School of Law to host the second Daystar University Annual Conference. This is a multidisciplinary conference, and that will be evident in the papers which will be presented, and these papers will cover an array of topics, starting from media and communication, governance, gender, environment, law, among others. And it is our sincere belief that the knowledge which will be disseminated in this conference will not remain as theoretical knowledge, but it will be that kind of knowledge that we will be able to benefit from across disciplines, and the kind of benefit which can be realized in real life. And of course, we recognize that research is the engine of social development. With those introductory remarks, I wish to take this opportunity to invite the Deputy Vice, the DVC Finance, Administration and Planning, Professor Muturi Washira. Karibu.
Thank you, Dr. Morris Owor. The VC, Daystar University, Professor Laban Airo, who is also one of the keynote speakers. Other keynote speakers, Professor Gedhu Muigai and Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi. Daystar University DVC in charge of research, academics, research, and student affairs, Professor Faith Guru. Members of staff, students, distinguished guests, good morning. Welcome to this annual conference, deemed Research and Development in the 21st Century. And to continue with the program, we are going to hear a few remarks from three speakers, and I'm going to invite Sister Professor Agnes Lando to come and make her remarks. This is the director in the Directorate of Research and Postgraduate Studies.
Thank you very much, DVC FAP. Vice Chancellor, Professor Laban Peter Airo, who is our chief guest this morning. Attorney General Emeritus and Chair of Legal Council of Education, Professor Gedhu Muigai. Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi, Chief Research Officer, Center for Microbiology at KEMRI. Professor Faith Nguru, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Research and Student Affairs. Professor Muturi Washira, DVC Finance and Planning. Professor Michael Bowen, Principal Nairobi Campus. Student leaders here present. All conference delegates in your various capacities. And of special mention, our students from both Daystar University and outside Daystar University. All conference delegates from within and without Daystar, and with all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much. God is good, and all the time, and that is His nature. First, I give glory and honor and praise to the Almighty God who has made this day come to pass. The School of Law that is convening this second Daystar University annual conference can testify that it has taken God to host this conference. Vice Chancellor, you will recall that Daystar University, since inception, has been hosting conferences convened by various schools and directorates of the university, but there was not an annual conference. A university annual conference culture was missing. Sir, you are also aware that the university's 2020-2025 strategic plan has 9 strategic priorities, and priority number 1 is research. Not any research, but research in high impact areas to help in the achievement of both university and national goals. And research requires an avenue to disseminate findings and publication. This reality compelled the Directorate of Research and Graduate Studies, with the support of the DVC, ARSA, and your office, to launch the university-wide annual conference. We thank you most sincerely, sir, for your love for research in particular and academic in general. You said yes to the idea of Daystar University Annual Conference, even though there were already many other conferences running in schools, directorates, and departments. This arrangement gives an opportunity to the university schools to lead and host the annual conference and an agreed upon theme. Thus, the first Daystar University Annual Conference was hosted by the Directorate of Research and Graduate Studies that was held on the 28th to the 30th September 2021 under the theme, Strengthening Research Process and Research Ethics for Healthy Nations. The second annual conference, being held today and tomorrow, is themed Research and Development in the 21st Century, hosted by the university's School of Law. The most difficult thing in life, based on my experience, is not to start something, but to sustain it and to keep it going. So this second Daystar University Annual Conference enables us to gladly confirm that the trains of scientific research and conference in Daystar University have left the station. I therefore heartily congratulate the School of Law for being brave to take the lead. We also appreciate the School of Law and the local organizing committee for planning the conference that lays emphasis on research and sustainable development. We hope that the conference will provide a platform for knowledge generation, sharing, collaboration, and networking. It is my hope that by the end of this second conference, the next school willing to host the third annual Daystar University Conference will receive the mantle from Dr. Maurice Owor immediately to begin preparing for that conference. As I mentioned at the beginning of my intervention, when the School of Law was in the verge of giving up because at some point things were not moving the right way and in the right direction, God raised up men and women from various departments of the university, schools, and even directorates to offer the much needed support. And for this, we are very, very grateful to one and all. This should in itself be an encouragement to any department or directorate or school organizing a conference in Daystar. It shall always be well. With these few remarks, I welcome all of us to actively participate in second Daystar University Annual Conference and wish us fruitful deliberations. Thank you all. God bless us and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Professor Agnes Lando. Our next speaker is Professor Faith Guru, DVC Academics, Research and Student Affairs, who after making her remarks will also invite the VC to make his remarks.
Good morning, everyone. It's a cold morning, but a very warm one inside. Are you feeling the warmth of knowledge and research and development? I want to welcome our keynote speakers this morning. Professor Githu Muigai will be introduced in greater detail, but is somebody that is well known by all of us. And we are very, very thankful that you're able to make time to come and be with us this morning. Professor Elizabeth Bukusi, thank you very much. And I can proudly say we shared a uniform, a school uniform at one point in the past. And it's been a great joy to watch her progress and become a role model in the areas of research. And a deeper introduction will be made later. Our Vice Chancellor will be coming to speak and make some brief remarks because he too is a keynote speaker. And we'll be hearing from him, a professor of research methods. So we are gathered here from different universities, different schools at Daystar University, and we come to this conference eager to hear and to learn about this mysterious thing called development. And why I say it is mysterious is because we've been looking for it for a very long time. In Kenya, for example, from independence, we've been looking for that mysterious thing called development. Our politicians are currently telling us how they'll bring development. They'll do this, they'll do the other, some sounding like fairy tales, the kind of things they are telling us. But they too are seeking development or to bring about development. And in my remarks this morning, I want to jog our mind as we listen to the keynote speakers and other paper presenters, that we ask ourselves, and we keep at the back of our minds, how come this development is so elusive? We've been trying to get it. I hope we will be asking ourselves and answering some questions, and I'll just raise a few as we welcome everybody to this wonderful conference, which is being run by the School of Law. And as has been said, it's taken quite some work because the School of Law is second youngest in the university. Does not have postgraduate programs as yet. We are preparing to have postgraduate programs going forward. They are in a very high level of preparation. But so far, the School of Law is going to graduate its first graduates this year. So it is a young school, but it took the courage. Thank you very much, Dr. Owor and your team, to say, yes, we'll take the baton from the directorate and run the annual conference. Thank you very much. It's a learning experience to run a conference. So whoever takes it on, we want to walk with you from the beginning so that the directorates, the resources of the university can come to the next school that will run the conference next year. So thank you and welcome everybody. And now to my questions about development, very quick ones that hopefully you'll be thinking through as we listen. How does a country's relationship with the rest of the world affect its development? So that we move just from this conference and from Kenya to the rest of the world. Are we going to manage in this conference to trace the history of different countries from the original state of development, comparing to the undeveloped state and that of underdevelopment? So these ideas, how come we need development so much? Were we always undeveloped or underdeveloped? And what is this mystery that we are looking for? Then we have a question about growth and development and the relationship between the two. Do they mean the same in the minds of listeners and practitioners and researchers? What are the various definitions? Then we are going to look at, and I think we are already starting to hint at this, real development. Because there could be some development that is not real. We are looking to answer the question of structural transformation, not only of the economy, but also of the individuals in each country. We are also looking at meaningful development that improves the quality of life among all the community members. So we are looking at politics, we are looking at economics, we are looking at law, and that's why we have this multidisciplinary approach to development. Hopefully, we can also go to the issue of development policies and programs that we know of, either in medicine, in law, in whichever area. What are they saying about the exploitation and the oppression that there is? Ignorance being one of the oppressors. And that's where research comes in handy. So how are we looking at those in the dominant classes, may they be political or economic, who oppress and create systems that make development so difficult? And finally, from my own area of study and research, how does communication play in the question of development? Are we ever going to make a dent in propagating participatory engagement of communities so that there will be catalytic interventions that address development concerns? And there are many, as you see in the papers. I wish in our discussions, in our listening, in our questioning, that we can look and tap into cultural knowledge, because each culture that is around has its own knowledge, including the religious values of communities. Can we tap into them? Can we tap into the aspirations of the people to make a dent, to understand, to grasp what this big, big, mysterious animal called development is all about? And we have the privilege this morning of listening to key individuals looking at this matter from different perspectives. And I appeal to all of us to engage so that we have some answers, some convictions to take us forward, even as individuals, that we think at the end of the 2 days of this interaction, I will enlist myself to be part of the development agenda. I will research from all angles so that by the end of my days, I will have made some dent in this whole question of development. So you are very, very welcome. And I will now ask our Vice Chancellor, Professor Laban Peter Airo, to make his remarks. And we know that later on he will come in with his address. Our Vice Chancellor, let's give him a clap as he comes up.
Thank you very much, Professor Faith Nguru. Our distinguished keynote speakers are present with us, Professor Githu Muigai, an eminent lawyer, but also the immediate former Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi, another eminent researcher in the area of medicine, the organizers of this conference, the chair, Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa, my dean, Dr. Morris Ajwang Owor, Dr. Martin Awor. I want to thank Asha Mikinyango for your spirit, Grace Ndeto and Winnie Washira, the Secretariat, and the committee, my students of Daystar School of Law. I want to welcome the other universities that are here today. and really take this opportunity as the Vice Chancellor to thank the School of Law for being courageous, young as they are, to host us today. I was looking at this program and abstracts, and I want to apologize on behalf of Daystar that one, that is not my CV, where there is profile, Laban Peter Hero, there's LLB, LLM. I would never have managed in those classes because I am a science person. So, but it would have been nice for me to feel relevant if you had put there my qualifications, and I would have tried to see whether they match the eminent key speakers that we have today. Secondly, Professor Githu and Professor Bukusi, I would like to note that when we talk about founders of Daystar, it's very, very important that we recognize that there is a whole aggregation of people who constitute the founders of Daystar. So yes, there is Donald and Faye Smith, but there is the late Mageria, very instrumental. There is Dr. Kamunge, who was the chancellor of this university when we got chartered. There is Professor Talitwala, who is the first vice chancellor. There is Peko and others. I think it's important to always recognize them so that we give our university the depth and strength that it requires. Thirdly, the students who are here, I hope you are mesmerized like I am when I look at the third paragraph on the keynote speaker, Professor Githu Muigai. No, the fourth paragraph. The fourth paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just noticed that. He was the best student from first year up to fourth year at the University of Nairobi. That, for me, as somebody in academia, tells me a lot about a person. But I know in Kenya, this no longer means much. Recently, I was one of the speakers when Zibora Kitonyi was launching her book. And as I sat there, poor me, Linus Kaikai was the MC. And he kept on recognizing everybody, Member of Parliament, Cabinet Secretary, MCA, Senator, and there was no reference to anybody else, but in that audience there were eminent professors, there were medics, there were researchers. In Kenya, those people don't matter. When I go to my local home in Vihiga or Kakamega, in funerals, somebody has to know me personally to bring a chair, because these are preserved for the MCA, the Member of Parliament, the governor, poor hero, who knows him in those circles. But I want us to change, because this conference, apart from what will go on, faith, on development, and what Sister Lando has said, for me, great lessons are learned from very small extracts, like that 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph. You look at that and you feel strong as a Kenyan. You know, that's why our country is getting weak. We value people. We see big posters, Governor Nairobi, or fifth president, but there's no substance. And that's why the country will never achieve those superlatives they're telling us that they're going to bring to us. But I'm so excited when I look at the achievements, and I'm not flattering the guest. I know what it takes to have an LLB and a PhD, an LLM from Columbia University. I don't know how many of you know what Columbia University stands for in this world. And I don't know what, some of you know what it means to be a Fulbright scholar. Do you know? The statistic is this: in every 10 million people on this earth, there is one Fulbright scholar. And you must begin to appreciate those things if you're aspiring to become. I'm talking to my students and even my lecturers. You must appreciate. So some of you, Daystarians or Daystar students, don't know that you are very lucky that you have a vice chancellor who is a Fulbright scholar. You have no idea. You just assume, oh, you know, a hero is, you know, VC, VC. So I was excited that there was a Fulbright scholar, because to get a Fulbright, you must do a proposal for research. It is vetted in Washington. There is a team there. So there is no ethnicity or relative or, and it is on merit. And you are given a full grant with your family to go to the US and pursue studies in the area of choice, fully funded. So there are very few Fulbright scholars, and I'm excited that our own Githu Muigai, he's a Ford Foundation fellow. I mean, I know what that means myself. And of course, having been our AG, what an honor for us as Daystar to have a man of this standing come to a conference in a school of law that is just beginning to crawl. Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi, I am lost for words. Bachelor of Medicine, a Master's of Medicine. I was asking her, how do I pronounce this obstetrics and gynecology. A PhD from the University of Washington in epidemiology. I don't know whether you understand. I teach statistics. And epidemiology is full of biostatistics. So I know the kind of mind that would sit in a class like that and get a PhD. And all those qualifications. For me, if there's nothing else I'll learn from this conference, it is the quality of our keynote speakers. Isolating myself from them because I don't measure that we have today. So I want to thank them for coming to grace this conference, and I'm trusting that we will learn from them. We will sit at their feet and get to learn. My law students in Daystar, and the other young men and women from the other universities, please imbibe this knowledge from these people who have a lot of experiences. I will not read what is in the booklet about my remarks, but I just want to say curiosity is what drives research. But in our African setting, we are discouraged to be curious because we are told that curiosity killed the cat. It's a proverb. So you should not inquire, you should not be inquisitive, you'll be getting into a lot of problems. But I've also read, and later on I discovered that curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. Yeah. So, you know, they say you have nine lives. Satisfaction brought it back. That there is great value in being curious and therefore engaging in research to find out what the truth is. And that is my wish for you. I am extremely excited that we can carry out a research conference. I am a little disappointed at us not having reached out to other people to bring in abstracts. I think this we have to work on. There's too much of Daystar in terms of presentations. But I want to encourage you, my dean, that you have made me very proud for taking up the challenge. I'm therefore very gratified by the multidisciplinary nature of the papers that will be presented, and that I challenge the researchers gathered here to purpose that your research findings contribute to positive change in society. I don't want to get into my keynote speech because I also want to challenge many of us on just how to write research. Many of us walk around as professors, me included, but there are no publications to fortify your professorship. And you go somewhere and you want to be called a professor, and you'll insist. You know, professor, you don't pronounce. It is pronounced. And I want to encourage all of us that we owe it to this country, to Africa. When you hear that our research output in Africa is only 2%, and you know research is a function of the GDP and the economic development of a country, then you know that Africa requires of us to stand up more strongly. Ladies and gentlemen, mnakaribishwa sana Daystar, mujisikie muko nyumbani, lakini tujihusishe na tutafute hali ya uzoefu katika mambo ya utafiti. That is what has brought us here. So with those very many comments, karibu sana Daystar. Thank you. Professor Boy, you are next. You know I was going to introduce the first keynote speaker, but come. Yes. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Professor Ayiro, our Vice Chancellor, for those very warm words of welcome to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce our first keynote speaker, Professor Githu Muigai. The Vice Chancellor has mentioned a few things captured in his profile, but I want to officially introduce to you Professor Githu Muigai, who holds a Bachelor's of Law and a PhD from the University of Nairobi, a Master's of Law from the Columbia University Law School, and Diploma in Law from the Kenya School of Law. Professor Muigai is a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He was called to the bar in 1985. He specializes in public procurement law, corporate finance, civil and commercial litigation. He is a recognized company on bank securities. Professor Muigai is a member of the Law Society of Kenya, the East African Law Society, the International Bar Association, the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, the International Commission of Jurists, the African Bar Association, Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in the UK, Permanent Court of Arbitration, The Hague, Republic of Kenya's designee to ICSID Panel of Arbitrators, Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, Kenya Branch, International Chamber of Commerce, Nairobi Center for International Arbitration, Kenya, and the Institute of Public Secretaries. Now, that sounds like Paul when he's writing. His sentence goes on for very many paragraphs, but that is who our keynote speaker is. He was the best student, first year law class, University of Nairobi, 1980, winner of the Hamilton, Harrison, and Matthews Advocates Prize for Best Law Student in 1981, best student, third year law class, University of Nairobi in 1984, winner of the Hamilton, Harrison, and Matthews Prize for Best Graduating Student in 1984, winner of the Kaplan and Stratton Advocates Prize for the Best Final Year Student, 1984, winner of the Gandhi Smarak Prize for Best Final Year Student, University of Nairobi, 1984, Fulbright Scholar, 1985 to 1986 in the US, Ford Foundation Fellow, 1991-1992, visiting Associate Professor of Law, Widener University Law School, Delaware in US, fall semester 1995. As regards the practice of law, Professor Muigai is senior counsel and the immediate former Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome our keynote speakers. Please, let's put our hands together. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for that very elaborate introduction. I want to thank the Vice Chancellor and the organizers of today's function for inviting me, my old friend and comrade, the Dean of the Law School, Dr. War, with whom I served in the Council of Legal Education. And I must say, Mr. Vice Chancellor, you're very lucky to have him. I found him a team player and a very dedicated law teacher. I was a bit surprised when I was asked to come and talk about research and development. And before I do that, let me apologize to the other key speakers, including Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi, whose CV I read and was very, very, very impressed. And I was saying to the Vice Chancellor that there is a very, very clear trend where the ladies are definitely sprinting forward. And the boy child needs to be, Professor Moni Kesa, you need to look after the boy child very carefully. I want to apologize because Dr. War, several months ago, asked me, would you be happy to come and talk at our annual conference? And I said yes. He then followed it with a letter. And when you get to my age, and when you have had the privilege, like the professor, the Vice Chancellor has had, of having a PA, you learn to press a button called forward. So I forwarded the letter of invitation to my PA, and there rested the matter. Until a week ago, when Dr. called me and said, we would like you to be there at 9. Is that convenient? I said, where? And the rest is history. So the truth is that I am double booked, as I have an arbitration involving several parties in the region, which will start at 11. Luckily, it is online, and maybe that may make me That is my one claim to being relevant to this conference, in that I know that you can hold an international commercial arbitration online. So, going back to the beginning, I was a bit surprised. I expected to be asked to come and talk about constitutional jurisprudence, which is where I have spent my life for the last so many years, arguing cases, researching, writing papers, writing books, addressing conferences, and so on. In fact, of all the things that I know, the one I know the least is research as such. That is to say, we have always had a seminar on research methodology at the Faculty of Law. And I have always teased my colleague who offers this seminar. I said to him, maybe I should attend your class because I need to know more about research methodology. Having said that, there is one thing that I know, and I want to share that with you. I know this to be true because I have lived it myself. We have entered irreversibly the era of the knowledge economy. We have irreversibly, as humanity, entered the epoch of the knowledge economy. And from now moving forward, the great value of civilizations will be weighed by their contribution to the global knowledge economy. And I want to share a few things that I have lived through and which make me very convinced that this has happened. And I think they convinced me, and I was very impressed that the Honorable the Vice Chancellor and I share very fundamental views about some issues, including the lack that our society, the lack of respect that our society demonstrates towards men and women of knowledge and of the purveyors of knowledge, and how we have allowed ourselves to degenerate to where petty village politicians are accorded standing when great women and men doing fantastic work to do research in agriculture, in medicine, in climate change, in the things that truly matter, go unheard, unsung, and unrecognized. I share that concern with you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let us ask ourselves a simple question. What are the biggest companies today that you can count on the two sets of fingers on your hands that are globally driving the global economy? Amazon, Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb. Can we continue that way? Apple. Do you know they were all founded in the dormitory of students? All of them without exception. They were founded in the dormitories of students. What do they tell us? I think they tell us a lot. They tell us that innovation and development does not require massive buildings, massive infrastructure. They require a dedicated mind. They required a single-minded person. They require commitment. And I think there is a metaphor there for us, especially for our students, and obviously for us as teachers. We continue to speak about the lack of employment, the lack of opportunities, and so on, and indeed that is possibly true. But we do not reflect enough about how much it is that we can do that is not being done. Again, following on the Vice Chancellor's comments, we come from a tradition where all of us, and I want to remind you of something that happened less than 2 years ago. Do you remember a time when everybody in Kenya became a quail farmer, selling quail eggs? That is very fundamental to how we as Kenyans think. That is, we have so-and-so. My cousin started a butchery at Shamahoho, and now he's got 2 pickups, and I want to start a butchery myself, and so on. That is a very deep-seated thinking in our society, and I am saying that we need to worry that that is actually not true. Let me challenge you by reminding you, and some of you, I want you to raise your hands and say, I do not know of those things you're talking about. IBM, International Business Machines, dead, comatose. BlackBerry. I used to have a BlackBerry. It was very prestigious, very, very prestigious. Dead or semi-dead. Nokia, on its deathbed. What happened? In the last 30 years, these were the leading electronic companies. They rode a wave of success and then went ignominiously into failure. Why? Simple. Research and development. Research and development. The lack of it. Research and development. The lack of it. There is only one direction that you will head. Whether we are Daystar University, Nairobi University, Strathmore University, or whether we are Safaricom or Airtel or whatever. Without research and development, you pick up and then you come crashing down. It's very painful. I can take you even further back, but I don't want to alienate the young scholars here. But people of my vintage will remember Kodak. It was the only way to take a photograph. Kodak. It dominated 90% of the market. In 2012, it filed for bankruptcy, to go away, never to return. It was blinded by its success in the 1970s and the 1990s. It forgot that research and development is what got it there in the first place. Okay? And we know that. We know that and I think it again goes back to what the Vice Chancellor was saying. I think we must have a mutual admiration society between the Vice Chancellor and myself. But he was talking about giving credit. In a university like this, every army marches on its stomach. And the stomach are the professors, those that are researching. In America, and I'm sure in Kenya increasingly now that we have a choice, you go to a university to be taught by a certain cadre of professors. You say, I have a letter to go to Kiambu University. Then you say, no. I am going to Kisumu University because I want to study medicine. And the professors who teach medicine in this way are in Kisumu University. So that the recognition of the intellectual capacity that makes an institution innovative is very critical, and we need to remind ourselves about it. And we need to remind ourselves about something else. What is the goal of education? A lot of us seem to think that the goal of education is to obtain a certificate, and that then that certificate will get you a job. Then that job will get you good pay, and that good pay will get you a good life. False. The purpose of education is to equip you with technical professional skills, but also to equip you with life skills. The life skills you will need to navigate life. If you look at our own beloved country, it is shocking how many people in very senior public offices lack the social skills to navigate life. They lack the social skills to navigate life. They lack empathy. They lack empathy. They lack sympathy. Yeah? They lack respect of other people. They lack the capacity to recognize and acknowledge other people. Without these life skills, no matter what you achieve, and I'll be coming to a man from our own very continent here called Elon Musk, a genius now of, I think there isn't a bigger genius on the world stage than Elon Musk. Completely, totally lacking the total skills. And just a little story about Elon Musk. Born in South Africa, mother a model, father an entrepreneur. And just to show you how important it is for you to get the social standing properly. His father today is married to Elon Musk's brother's wife. Yeah? And only yesterday, Elon Musk's own son applied to court to be allowed first to change from a man to a woman and then to abandon his name and to Carter. No matter how intelligent we are, we need to start off at the right time with the right capacity to navigate life. And those are the soft skills. And they are as critical as the hard skills. And we need to get them from here in our universities. So if we then come back to this question of R&D, why is R&D at the heart of where we are going? It is because knowledge keeps changing. Knowledge keeps being created. We in the universities have a unique opportunity to create new knowledge and then disseminate it. Now, when we create new knowledge, it means that unless persons continue to drink deep from the well of knowledge, very quickly, you can become irrelevant. I can tell you this for free. Any lawyer in Kenya above the age of 65 who tells you that he can litigate in the commercial court on company insolvencies is either a charlatan or a liar or both. The law has changed so dramatically in the last so many years that unless you now have a very serious understanding of finance and of accounting, it is almost impossible to be involved in insolvencies. And in the old universities, there was nobody who taught lawyers finance, nobody who taught lawyers accounting, nobody who taught lawyers auditing, and so on. And I shudder to think what is going on in medicine and how quickly a doctor can become illiterate, functionally illiterate, due to the dynamic changes that are taking place there. And therefore, if you think, therefore, that a decade ago, we were fighting to discover oil. And we are still fighting to build pipelines from Uganda. We are fighting with Uganda, diplomatic fights, whether the pipeline will come to Kenya, whether it will go to Tanzania. In the meantime, the whole world has forgotten about oil, or is forgetting about oil, and we are going to electric vehicles, and again, with that our Mr. Musk is relevant, so that Mr. Musk today, a young man from Cape Town, has become the biggest thinker on the future of locomotion in the world. Not to mention that he has bought Twitter. And what is Twitter, ladies and gentlemen? What is he buying? Is it a factory? Does it create coffee, tea, anything? It creates nothing. It's a platform for distributing, some people would say, disinformation, and so on and so forth. But the truth is, all the equipment, all the minerals you require to make electric vehicles viable are here on the African continent. They are here in Congo, which is part of our East African community. The R&D, the research and development that needs to happen here, so that we don't pack these minerals and send them to, think about Niger, a place where I don't want to say that God forgot it, because God never forgets any place, but a place that appears to have been forgotten, Niger. I think it's the world's largest producer of very important minerals that are critical for much of the modern material going into phones, silicon chips, and what have you. How is Niger to know how much Russia has taken? There may be no scientist, there may be no Nigerian scientist who can even say, was that 10 kilos, 5 kilos, or 50 kilos? Isn't that a bit of a tragedy? And I think, therefore, that the investment in research in our own continent, in our own institution, speaks for itself. And look at what is happening with Google, for example. What is it? Google is an advertiser, a data harvester, right? And it is now a platform of such huge capability that it is probably bigger than the economy of the entire East African community combined and tripled. So, in my view, the 21st century requires us to make a very important mental shift. Our politicians are still talking about donkeys and camels. Donkeys and camels. You are raiding our donkeys. You are raiding our camels. You are raiding our cows. So we are in the first century, and the rest of the world has left behind the donkey and the camel and has moved to where the future will be. We need to make that intellectual transition. We must begin to think of the knowledge economy and becoming part and parcel of that economy. And then all this, our other little problems will disappear. The problem of whether the boundary between Machakos and Kiambu is here or there, or between Kajiado and Machakos, it will be a non-issue, a complete non-issue. Then, and again, we need to remind ourselves about this because it's critical. We seem to think that applied science is where we are going. There will never be applied science without basic science. We need to strengthen the teaching of mathematics, of physics, of chemistry, and of biology from high school. We need to go back to basic science. The real challenge is in basic science. There will never be an applied science if the basic sciences are unknown. And right now, we have started shifting because I think we have become a lazier people. We, the teachers, are lazy. We have transmitted laziness to our students. Parents are lazy. They have transmitted laziness. We need to go back to the hard work. And the hard work is crunching math, physics, chemistry, biology, the basic sciences. We must command them. And when we command them, we will then transition to applied sciences. Now, I want to give you a challenge, especially the young scholars. Go and look at what they call the Fortune 500, the biggest companies in the world. Go and look at the first 20 and tell me the number of Asian faces you will see. The number of Asian faces you will see leading these companies. Why? Prof will tell you, when we went to America, the number of graduate students, every department of physics, of mathematics, of geophysics, of anything important, of economics, of microeconomics, of finance, there were Asian students. The investment in knowledge is an investment that pays. Every year people say Kenyans receive a lot of money as remittances. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you are cleaning a toilet at Heathrow Airport, you cannot remit anything to anybody because you are living hand to mouth. Who is remitting money to Kenya? Nurses, school teachers, people who have a skill. These are people with a skill because they have some income, that they have a disposable income. And think of a nurse in some place in the UK or in the US who is able to send $100 a month to the mother in Dumberi or in Nyaribari Church. How much money is that? $100. It's a lot of money in that economy. So what stands out for Kenya is that the investment that our parents, in my generation, the investment our parents made in education, and most of us here were educated when the parent would say, school is opening on Monday, take my bull to the market. He would sell anything, everything. He would sell everything. He would say, our plot is 5 acres. I want to excise 1 acre because so-and-so is going to university. And they would pay for students to go anywhere in the world. They valued education. That is the money now coming back as remittances. If we don't continue to work on the knowledge economy, people washing toilets will not be able to remit money. They will not be able to support this economy. It is people working within the knowledge economy in those places. And that, I think, is absolutely important. And this is what sets Kenyans apart. When you go right round this continent, you will find a Kenyan everywhere, and you will find him doing something meaningful, something substantive, because 8 out of 10 times, he's an educated, she's an educated person. And then the dignity of labor, which is what our parents transmitted to us. Do not be afraid to work with your hands. There is dignity in working with your hands. And above all else, a work ethic. When I travel throughout this continent, and indeed the world, the one thing I hear about Kenyan workers, they are very ethical. He will come to work on time, and she will leave work on time. She will not declare false medical holidays, and she will be at work. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, that you are having this conference at a very critical time when we need to rededicate ourselves to being a society where knowledge is valued, is treasured, is created, is transmitted, and is stored, so that the next generation coming behind us will be able to find a country with a robust tradition of valuing knowledge and creating knowledge. If we don't do that, then we will be part of the failed states, where people in failed states are still fighting primitive wars, primitive conflicts about things that ceased to be important a generation, 3 generations ago. We'll be fighting about camels, pundas, and so on and so forth, when we should be fighting for space we should be fighting for broadband. Isn't that what we should be fighting for? We should be fighting to have 5G in Kenya, so that in your student room, after your break in the evening, you can go online and do online work for global employers. People who want a person who speaks English, writes good English, has access to a computer, and who can crunch data. Is that what you want to do? Or do you want to wear your shuka and go to your village and be part of a dispute about which number of cows crossed from which boundary to which boundary? I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is the world behind us. Let us stay firmly on the world that is the future, that is this is what God has promised us. We used to sing when I was a boy, we are standing on the promises of God. Thank you.
Tungesimama tumpe makofi ya heshima, na ningependa turudi kwa karne iliyopita, tumpe makofi ya nyayo. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. You may be seated. I know, as he has indicated, he might have to leave. But what an inspiration. And for me, that is what a university is all about. Going back to the basics, and Prof, I keep struggling with my students of today, and somehow they think maybe I'm archaic. But it is astonishing. I've just been in the US for 6 weeks and went through about 7 universities. I never saw students on mobiles. I never saw students walking around on mobiles or earphones. Students were on their laptops. Students were doing collaborative learning. Students were doing presentations. And that's how they will always be ahead of us. So as I came back, I've been trying to think. I'm going to be very old school in Daystar. Maybe we should introduce, for example, one book every semester. A reader, just a reader. And I can go back to my days. I could pick Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, or No Longer at Ease, or River Between, or A Grain of Wheat by Ngugi, or Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. And everybody in Daystar that semester reads that book. And then we have scattered encounters around that book. Because the young generation here, you will never achieve the needed artistry in your area if you have not gone to the basics of accumulating knowledge. So Professor Waithima, when we are teaching statistics, don't let these people run to the software programs and they're punching in numbers and getting outputs coming out and then trying to interpret. No, let them do calculations around standard deviation, around variance. Let them work through analysis of variance. Then they can exploit the technology to advance themselves. I'm very excited. One of the woes, I'm one of the architects of the CBC, and one of the woes I have with the implementation of CBC today is that we are telling students to engage in learning through doing, but they have no theory and knowledge. Unakumbuka wakati zetu, that table, the multiplication table, was always behind the exercise book, and you had to learn it, my friend. The teacher starts the first multiplication out there at the lift. By the time he's getting in the class, he's on number 6. So already you have 5 ibokos because you had not heard what he was saying. And that's how we became. The intensity of involvement is the dilemma we are in. And now when you go to our universities, I think somebody has got to think about universities in Kenya. At my university, that means the university that made me a professor, Moi, you have lecture halls of 1,000 students. And you're teaching statistics. And some are busy on the phone, some are doing whatever they want to do. The lecturer does not have a public address. And then they walk away, and then they go and memorize a few things, and then they'll come in the exam because I've seen how exams are set. We shall never sit in that space of determining the future of our country and Africa. So I'm excited that our keynote speaker, those of us who are very keen, he was working on a certain thematic area dubbed the knowledge economy. And a knowledge economy is not, I've kept on telling you, even you students, don't send me happy birthday, Professor Iro, and you can't even give me an original message. You look for somebody who has drawn flowers and written happy birthday, and then you send it to me. The continent of downloaders. We never upload. We are always downloading. So, Prof, I'm very excited. You have really set the theme. I'm looking forward to my sister coming in. And then me, I'll just provide the raw because it will have been done. Ubarikiwe sana. Let's clap for him. Thank you very much. Okay. And Daystar is always generous. So
Thank you, Prof.
thank you for honoring us. Thank you so much. And those classes you are teaching at the University of Nairobi, we are starting our master's program very soon. Please come in. Please come in and help us. Yes. Okay. So he'll see you off. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. It's a bit cold, but that was really exciting. This morning, I have the pleasure of inviting the next keynote speaker, who is a medical doctor. She attained her general medicine degree and master's degree in the University of Nairobi. She is an obstetrician and gynecologist. She further earned a certificate in international health, master's in public health, and a PhD from the University of Washington in the Department of Epidemiology. She has a postgraduate diploma in research ethics from the University of Cape Town and a master's in bioethics from the Center for Bioethics and Culture at the Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplantation in Karachi. She is a certified IRB professional. She's a senior principal clinical research scientist at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, a research professor at the University of Washington in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Global Health. She is an honorary lecturer at the Aga Khan University in Nairobi and Maseno University in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and a volunteer clinical faculty, a professor at the University of California, San Francisco, in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Reproductive Sciences. In collaboration with Dr. Craig Cohen of UCSF, she established the KEMRI Research Center, Research Care and Training Program in 1995. In addition to her substantial experience in conducting social, behavioral, and biomedical research and providing HIV care, mentoring and training healthcare and research personnel to enhance local and international capacity, she has a strong interest in research and clinical ethics and the development of systems and structures for regulation of research at KEMRI and in the country. She is the chairperson of the National Bioethics Society of Kenya, BSK, where I am a member, a multidisciplinary, non-political, non-discriminatory, and not-for-profit organization with the primary objective of promoting high ethical standards in biomedical research, medicine, and healthcare in Kenya. She is a board member of AVSC, has chaired the WHO HRP Alliance Capacity Building for Reproductive Health Research from 2016 to 2021. She is a trustee for the HIV Trust and an elected fellow of the African Academy of Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Professor Elizabeth Ann Bukusi.
Good morning, everybody. It really is a great delight and pleasure for me to be here with you today. And let me start by saying something that I read the statement, Christ in my heart, that's the difference, really resonates with me. Because I really do believe that that makes a world of difference to who we are and what we can be. It's my privilege this morning, and I really want to thank the organizers for inviting me to share with you this morning to talk about functional research for development. Before I dive into my talk, let me tell you a little bit about myself to just set the stage. My interest in research, when I look back, started a long time ago. I was born in an era where family planning was considered to be have as many children as you can in as fast a period as you can. So we were born as a staircase, you know, one after the other. And my four, I guess if I count myself as a fifth, siblings and I grew up in a world where we did a lot of research without realizing it. And I'd like to describe a little bit of the research we did and the development that resulted from it and how that propelled me into the world of research. I'll give you 3 examples. One, my elder brother, who was really given to adventure, convinced us that one of the interesting ways to find out about if gravity really works was to climb the roof and then jump down. We followed his visionary leadership and learned how to climb the roof and jump down. Now, the roof was painted red. What we didn't remember was that when you climb onto something that's painted red, it's going to remain on your hands and on your backside. My mother, who would come home in the evening, having told us not to engage in such activities, she was a deterrent of development in some ways, would ask, "Did you climb the roof?" We would line up, smile, and say, "No." Then she would say, "Turn around." You can imagine the warm backsides we had thereafter, given that our backsides were all red from, of course, having climbed the roof. Having been deterred from that, we thought about other experiments. Again, my older brother, who was really a worthwhile champion of research, asked us to think about why is it that cats do not have a bath? And he said, you know, the cat that we had at home, it's probably very dirty from not having been exposed to a bath. So we decided we're going to give the cat a bath. Now you can imagine 5 children trying to hold a cat down in water. We were rewarded with many, many scratches, and we learned not to go back in that direction. Our development in research was definitely continuing. The third example I want to give you, and sadly, it didn't put an end to our research endeavors, but I won't describe some of the others, which are more hairy, was we discovered a beehive one day in the garden where we lived. And my brother said, you know, the way to discover whether they make honey is to take a stick, put it inside the hive, and shake it. And once you shake it, then the bees will make a lot of honey and will be able to get the stick out and get the honey. From the way some of you are laughing, I think you have done such experiments in the past. Needless to say, we learned a very difficult lesson. Those bees chased us. Were it not for the grace of God, I don't know if some of us would have been alive today. But it definitely set the stage for us to help us think about issues of research. I want to talk a little bit about the definitions of research. I'll go on to talk about research that is responsive. What does that mean? Then I want us to think about ethics, because I was told to think about the 21st century, and I want to focus our thinking about the century that we're living in. Go to issues of data, production, and integrity. Think about the issues of community. And finally, because of the field that I work in, which is health, I want to focus a little bit on a case study on the study of HIV, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where we have the highest prevalences and are really impacted by this disease that has been around for the last 40 years. And I hope you'll think about it also in the context of the COVID pandemic that we are managing right now. So let's start by thinking about definitions. So what is research? We always think about it as a process where we are collecting data, we are documenting critical information, we analyze, we interpret, we make decisions. But you know, many people do research just for the sake of doing research. However, for research to be functional,
It needs to have explanations and answers that provide a response to problems that individuals are experiencing. It's not just for scientific advancement, but it makes a difference to how people live. And I'm really glad that our former AG spoke before me, because he did really allude to the fact that there are solutions to problems, but they're not going to be found by others. We have to find those solutions ourselves. So what does research that is responsive mean? Who is it for? Why are we doing it? There's a lot of growing competition in this world of research right now. There is pressure to actually produce results. And you've seen it during the COVID pandemic. We desperately needed to find a way to allow the world to be able to continue functioning as we had known it before the COVID pandemic hit us. And what do we use? And your VC alluded to this a short while ago. He talked about, are we still having professors who profess? There's actual publication. There's new information being rolled out that says they're indeed worthy of the titles that they're holding. So the goal of research is actually to advance society, to make a difference. And beyond making a difference, you must disseminate it. If it is not disseminated, if it's not documented, it's not done. Research for any country must be responsive to the public or to the country's needs and priorities. What is it that ails Kenyans? What do Kenyans need? What will help Kenyans? Or if you're thinking regionally, what will make a difference in the region? It must produce recommendations. But then comes the hitch. Is there funding for this research? He who pays the piper calls the tune. If I'm funding research, I will fund it for what answers my needs. Who is funding the research? And therefore, what is determining what research is being done? Let's look at some countries that really made a difference. And I know both from law and humanities and in medicine and communication, you've studied these particular countries. We call them the Asian tigers. Education was a key role in their turning around their economic situations. I see a lot of things being sent around on WhatsApp about Singapore and how Singapore and Kenya started pretty much on the same foot, isn't it? And now, 50 plus years on, Kenya is still on the back burner. Singapore is way ahead of us. What made the difference? It really was research. They focused on investing, and the former AG talked about this, investing heavily in infrastructure and education to benefit their country. And they've become global education centers. Even now, many universities in the West are using these countries as the hub of some of their university education. So that you go and get a university education that's equivalent to getting one in the UK, but you pay less for it by being in one of these countries. Is that not true? Because they became strong educational centers that people could utilize. And as a result, their economies have developed. They've become high-income countries, while we are shifting from low to medium income countries, because we have not invested sufficiently in the things that really matter. Which brings us to the century that we're in. So what are the changes and what are the differences that we need in this century? And again, the former AG laid the groundwork really well. We have become digital. Even now, the number of people attending this conference is not equivalent to the number of people in this room, isn't it? I would like to imagine the majority of individuals are probably elsewhere. They're streaming online, they're listening, whether it's on Zoom, on Facebook, Instagram. So attendance no longer requires a physical presence, it requires a digital presence. As a result, we have to think about what are the digital methods of research that will be responsive in this century. And with that, What are the ethics around this? Because that becomes an important thing for us to think about. Now, when we think about the digital research, we know that we're using virtual platforms. And there are many ways we can use this, but I want to highlight just two of them. One, using the digital technology in order to conduct the research, for example, doing interviews online. But the second, which is more salient and even more important because it's what helps drive the economy. It's what has resulted in what was being described by a previous speaker as the reason why Elon Musk has actually bought Twitter. It's using the internet and the virtual platforms as a means of collecting data. Whenever you go online and you're busy Googling, someone is tracking you and taking that data down. The reason you can Google free of charge is because you're contributing valuable data to somebody who's utilizing that information. So there's no free lunch. The free is only because you think you're not paying for it directly. You will pay for it because the next time you go online, guess what they offer you? The last thing you looked at, isn't it? And there are many ways that we can utilize these digital research methods. And in the last 2 years, this has actually been blown way out of proportion because the requirement for people to physically distance themselves and isolate meant that these platforms grew even larger, even wider, even more utilized. I'm sure many of you now don't always bother to go to the supermarket. You use one of your digital platforms to shop, isn't it? You forgot to pick something from the supermarket? Go on Glovo, go on Jumia, buy it, get it delivered to your home. So we are utilizing all these things and we are contributing a lot of data that people are utilizing for research. But we are also using it to be able to ourselves conduct classes, collect research information, and so on. The surveys, the survey monkeys, all these things that we're using. The information people put out on certain blogs or even respond to on Twitter platforms provide very rich data for being able to analyze. What are people thinking? Where are they going? What do they want? And the question then becomes, have you given permission? By having gone online, have you accepted that your data can be utilized? By having utilized that platform, have you automatically agreed that indeed that information should be utilized? Now this thing seems to be stuck. Maybe I'll let you move it for me because it's not shifting. If you'd move to the next. Okay, and the next one, please. And the next one. Great, thank you. So I want you to think about what are the key things that should be considered when you are conducting research. The question is your privacy. What does that mean? Are you fully aware that your data and personal details are accessible and are being collected? Have you given permission? Has anybody asked you explicitly to allow for that data to be used? Have you given consent knowing what the information is for, why it's being collected, what it will be used for? I think these two aren't quite matching. I'm quite safe. I hope you're safe. I hope your ears are safe. Shall we go on? Okay. So hoping that you've given clear consent and that the consent is documented, that indeed you have accepted, that this is something that you are willing to be part of. One of the problems, however, of using digital data is we end up excluding some individuals. Sometimes there's a barrier with the actual language and the use of language. How easy are those documents for people to read? Are there alternative ways that we could allow them to be able to access this? And in the field of language, I'd like to put it to you, even the issues of age become a concern. I find when I'm working with people who are aged below 30, sometimes I actually do not understand what they're saying. They're clearly speaking in English or Kiswahili or Sheng, but I have no idea what the words they're using actually mean, because I understand those words from a very different way than they do. I teach Sunday school, and the class I teach is made of mainly 13 and 14-year-olds. And I often find that the things that they say really puzzle me. I have to go and look them up, because otherwise I am truly lost. Because some of the comments and the examples they give me, I cannot even relate to, because I was 13 or 14 many years ago. So these can form some of the barriers that we have to overcome. But more importantly, beyond that is also the question of data security. The data that is identifiable must be held securely. And the question is, how secure is that data? Who is holding it? Under what kind of data protection? Who are they sharing it with? Privacy and confidentiality are really important in research. It's not just about who you've given information to, but who else are they sharing that information with? Can it be clear that unauthorized individuals will not be able to access that data? And can that information be protected so that a third party who is not supposed to have that information clearly will not have access to it? Now, I've highlighted this in the sense of the digital platform because that is where the majority of the leaks happen. And that's where the greatest amount of breaches happen. When we're conducting research, especially thinking about it from a human health point of view, often it's a lot easier to secure that kind of information. Or to say things like, if you're conducting research in a health facility, there must be a private room where the individual who's providing the information comes into a place where not everybody's seeing them, not everybody's hearing what they're saying, and they have the opportunity to share the information they want. How does that happen when we are going digitally? We know that a lot of the platforms we use are not porous free. They can be hacked. Information can be accessed. But anybody who's participating has the right for them to actually be protected. Which leads me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is actually, what are the core principles of what we call bioethics? When you're doing ethics, whether it's in the field of human or other research, what are the basics, especially for individuals that can be identified, that we need to be able to observe? It's about ensuring that each individual is given respect. It's treating the individual as an autonomous agent, meaning they have the right to be able to choose what they're going to be involved with and what they won't. Allowing them to exercise this autonomy. And then, two key things: doing them good, beneficence, and non-maleficence, ensuring that we do not do any harm. Harm can be done in many ways. It's not just about physical harm. Because often, harm is done not in the physical sphere, but in the mental, psychological, or social spheres. And that harm can be even more difficult to undo than when you talk about physical harm. How do we ensure that we minimize risk and yet maximize potential benefits? How do we ensure that we stop or reduce the possibility of embarrassment and psychological distress that can be caused when things leak out on those digital platforms? What about things like social harm and loss of things like employment? Now, for the students, often people think, nobody cares what I put on my social media platforms. Imagine it matters. Employers often look at social media platforms before they employ you. I'm made to understand right now, even when you apply for visas in some countries, they ask you about your social media platforms, isn't it? And they go to look at what are you posting on those social media platforms, even just to get a simple thing like a visa. Those platforms can provide an opportunity that could even cause you challenges when it comes to legal, criminal, or civil liability. Meaning this open space that we're thinking is available and free for us to be able to interact with. We are not thinking, what does this truly mean? What am I saying about myself? What am I saying about the people I am connected to? Because often, when people are looking at your social media platform, it's not about you only. It's about you and the people you're connected to. They often say, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends. So those people define who you are. Those people you're linked to, talking to on Facebook, Instagram, constantly chatting with, constantly posting back and forth. Those are the people who are saying, who are you and what are you like? So emphasizing once again the importance of confidentiality in research, we must be in a space where even when we're using these digital platforms, we must create trust to ensure that the data we are collecting is honest, but we are also providing honest information to those who are participating. We are minimizing stigma and stress and minimizing the possibility of getting people into trouble. We must ensure that there is actual consent. People understand what they are consenting to and give us permission. We reassure them or don't about how we are able to keep their information private. If we're going to use this information for other sources beyond the immediate research, that we inform them, and also that there can be incidental findings that can be a result of what they've participated in, and that can also be used in the future. There are many ways of being able to do this. Unfortunately, most of the platforms do not take advantage of these, ensuring that there's encryption software that makes it difficult for data to be accessed, the way in which they are stored, which makes them more unidentifiable, or ensuring that the data is held in a way where it's not easy to access from mobile devices. It makes me want to move into a different area before I finally talk to you about the case study I want to describe, which is thinking about the community. Because when we are thinking about research, and remember we started from talking about functional research, research that is responsive to the needs of individuals, then we are talking about the community. So how does the community come in? If I was to ask you about the community that you come from and ask about what is the research literacy like in that community, I wonder what your reply would be. Are people well informed enough to be able to make autonomous decisions about what they're going to do? Do they understand the details? In the clinical research field that I work in, sometimes we have consent forms that are 30 pages long. Because we need to tell people every single detail, every single possible reaction, every challenge that may happen. I don't know that they actually read those forms properly. We try, but often they're getting tired. Just bring the form. Daktari letter, ipige sei tuendelee. Are we sure that we are doing enough to create community engagement that lets people know what is the importance of research? How do we empower them to ensure that when we are implementing the research that we want to do in whatever field, that they're able to engage truly? How do we ensure that different stakeholders have adequate inbuilt trust to be able to work together to find the answers? In order to do that, I think we need to prioritize. And I want to draw back on the Asian tiger countries. We, as a country, we, as tertiary universities and research institutions, we are not doing enough to build infrastructure. We are not doing enough to to be able to answer the questions that we need to answer. We depend on somebody somewhere in the West, in certain foundations, in certain countries, to make the agenda for our research. So if there are calls for malaria research, I as a researcher will apply for it, even if the biggest problem is not malaria, but malnutrition. Even if the biggest challenge is water and sanitation and cholera that has been endemic in this city for the last close to 7 years. Typhoid, basic things that we have not been able to eliminate in the city of Nairobi. But if nobody is doing research and putting out funds for research on typhoid, as a researcher, I can't do that research. I don't have the funding. So I'll apply for malaria research, I'll apply for COVID funding, I'll apply for whatever is available for me to continue doing my work. Do we know what is the priority for research in this country? Do we have a clear plan that says, and research in every sector, don't just think about human, legal, animal, agriculture, social. Do we know where our priorities should lie? What do we need to do research on? Are we directing our scholars and our students to focus on those areas? And when the results of this research come, is there equitable distribution? I want to remind us about the COVID-19 pandemic and the research that was done with regards to vaccines. Can you remember who got priority when the vaccines were ready? I see you all mumbling. Was it you? The countries that had the financial power muscled their financial power and booked vaccines. So that countries that didn't have and were waiting for somebody to subsidize the cost of vaccines were left hanging. In fact, it's only to our benefit that we are not as well connected travel-wise with the rest of the world. That's part of the reason why we didn't see as severe an epidemic. Then number two, we tend to have a younger population. And then number three, we fight so many infections all the time that our immunity is probably already way up. So there are things that mitigated the severity for us without our deliberately choosing to and making decisions that would help us. There are some priorities that have been identified in the area of food and nutrition, manufacturing, universal health coverage, affordable housing, and academic research. But in each of these areas, unless there is concerted effort to ensure that funding is reserved for this, then you will not be able to do the research. Your VC has just talked about having been part of the architecture of CBC, but the implementation, however, is not following perhaps what they would have wanted. I know this is political season and I'm not taking any political stand, but if we as academicians and you as students do not create the political will that champions and ensures there is infrastructure, funding available, then we cannot progress. If all the funding is only demarcated for non-research purposes, then we cannot expect that we will ever make a difference. The world is talking a lot about decolonization and fair collaboration because it's very clear that research that is funded from certain countries will always be focused on those countries. The reason many developed worlds do work on malaria is because of their own security. They send their soldiers to malaria-infested zones, and they want to make sure that those soldiers will return home alive. It's not because of you that they're doing that research. They do research that will maximize benefits for their own citizens. So unless we get to the point where we can start shifting the power imbalances and ensuring that our decolonization results in us taking responsibility to make decisions that will help us, then it will be very difficult for us to truly do research that informs development in this century. In the last few minutes, I just want to go into the history of HIV. Because this is something that is still a problem for us today. And I was actually at a different meeting where we're looking at HIV among the youth. In this country today, young people aged between 15 and 24 have the highest risk of HIV, especially young women. They contribute to over half new infections every year. So long as we have these new infections coming in, we can't stop this epidemic. It doesn't matter how many people we get on treatment, because once you have it, it's with you for life. It then drains our economy because we have to keep them on treatment. Treatment means drugs. Drugs means a cost. Who's making the money? The drug manufacturer. Prevention remains a challenge. So let me share with you very briefly in the next few minutes what happened in Africa when it comes to HIV. We are the continent that has about 10% of the world's population, but we have 80% of those living with HIV. Why did this happen? We do have a young population that is explosive in terms of its demographic growth, but issues of urbanization, social change, and the inequities that result with us having challenges of inadequate health systems, and the imperialism that has led to challenges with our job creation. We don't manufacture, we produce raw substances that are used by others to manufacture goods which they even sell back to us. As a result of that, our economies have not grown in the same way, and these are the things that led to the very high levels of HIV. We know that by 1983, we could already tell, that's when I was in medical school, we could already tell that there was HIV within the continent. But because of stigma and because of challenges with negative consequences, people never accepted that HIV was here. So it spread far and wide. And we only then started to later realize and then declare this as a problem and a disaster and start to address issues by setting up national AIDS control programs to try and attend to this challenge. But what happened? We actually didn't do the research that was required. We were importing research from places that didn't really understand what our epidemics were like. And the kind of things that people talked about was that, oh, Africans get HIV because they're promiscuous. It was not true. There was nothing that Africans were doing that were different from what anybody did in any other part of the world. But there was limited knowledge and limited research that was done in HIV. And it took a long time for us to get to the point where we could actually do enough research. People even theorized and said, oh, it began in Africa anyway. Must have been something linked to monkeys, linked to who? We've never truly been able to say, so what was the origin? But what we do know is that it has been with us for the last 40 years. As research continued, people started focusing on treatment. How do we treat HIV? Again, not enough work was done within the sub-Saharan African region, where we had the most number of infections. Even treatment became a challenge, with people quoting things like, you can't treat Africans because they don't know the time of day, they will not be able to take medicine appropriately. So all will happen is resistance will grow. None of this was true. It was only when we started focusing on doing research within this population that we started finding answers. Things like voluntary male medical circumcision, VMMC. Research was done here on this subcontinent. And we've seen the impact that it has had. Things like post-exposure prophylaxis, pre-exposure prophylaxis, availability of a vaginal ring to protect people from HIV, and the combination packages that people are working on now. All that work has actually been done here to be able to answer the questions that were relevant for us. But sadly, and this is my caveat, that work has not been funded by us. So we still do research that somebody else somewhere thinks is important for us to do. Someone is still paying the piper, calling the tune, and we are dancing to it. There are questions we still don't know even up to now. And we can't answer them because nobody is putting in the money and the infrastructure. The former AG talked about basic research, a very important concept. We don't have enough basic research in this country. Yes, we have good laboratories, even at Cambridge, but not the kind that are required for doing the kind of basic research that makes a difference. When I, as a researcher, get a grant from a foreign institution, the maximum they will allow me for institutional overheads will range between 5 to 8. The very generous ones may give us 20%. When they fund researchers in their own country, they give them overheads of 50%, 60%, 75% in some cancer research institute. What does that mean? It means they can develop infrastructure at a level that I can't. All I can afford is perhaps to be able to support electricity, a new generator perhaps, when electricity disappears, ensure that water is running, and get my research done. My counterpart, who's getting 60%, can design a new building. They can put up new infrastructure. We are not competing. We are not on the same level. The point I want to make as I finish is that unless we build the infrastructure and the requirements into our research enterprise, we cannot do research for development. If someone else sets our agenda, we will not get ahead. Finishing by talking about the basics that people need to do. I've often been in panels that review research proposals, and the main thing we find is this, and I'll speak for Kenyans. We have excellent research ideas. We have terrible communication and writing skills, terrible. So we don't win grants because we haven't learned the art of grantmanship. Because at our secondary and our tertiary levels, we are focusing on content, but not focusing on literacy and style. So you have an excellent idea, but you don't know how to put it down on paper. And the person who's going to review it is not going to say, oh, this is an East African. Let me consider how they're writing. You know, they think and they speak a little differently. No, you're measured on the same international platform. And as a result, our excellent research ideas do not get utilized because we do not know how to express them well. So I want to challenge you as I finish, especially because I know you are strong in communication. We need to build up the culture of reading, as the VC said, but also of writing, and writing well. Learning to write well so that our excellent ideas can be put down in a manner that allows us to be able to grow the research enterprise that will answer the questions that we need to answer. I really do want to thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on research for development. I hope something I have said somewhere will resonate and will make a difference to somebody. And I do hope that moving forward, we'll be able to do differently and be able to answer questions for our country in a manner which will make a difference and improve the lives of those who are here today and those who will be here tomorrow. And indeed, as your poster says, Christ in my heart, that's the difference. I hope that will truly make a difference for you as Daystar University. Thank you.
You guys are not reading the future. The future in Kenya is in the hands of ladies. Thank you so much, Prof. I don't know how to put it, but this was a very well thought out presentation. And the challenge you have brought out of communication, normally I call it the artistry. When I was a provincial director of education in Western, I had a driver called Mohammed. And whenever we would be on the road, Nakuru, Kericho, and we got a puncture, Mohammed would come out of the car and tell me, Mkubwa, we simama hapo. And I always timed him. In exactly between 4 and 5 minutes, he'll have changed the tire. when I would be driving alone with my wife and we got a puncture, the first thing I did was to remove the coat. If I had a tie, put it aside, fold the shirt, and it would take me almost 30 minutes just to unbolt, to bring out the tire, kupiga jack, and then bring the good tire. And that would be 45 to 1 hour, and I'll be all sweating. That's what she's saying. You can only attain the level of artistry to compete globally if you punish yourself. Punish in quotes. And you'll never become great unless you walk where great people have also walked. So you can't become a great researcher if you don't internalize, conceptualize, understand the research process. And this is a struggle I've had, DVC academic, in Daystar. Last semester we were teaching research methods with Professor Waithima. And you know, I had hardly gone to where I wanted to go, and I was told the semester is over, we are finished, give us your exam. And in my mind, deep in my mind, I know those students have not mastered the research methods. Lakini wamefanya exam, I haven't seen the marks. I'm sure there are very many A's. That is the tragedy of Africa. And we keep repeating it the same. We keep doing it. We know it is not right. We don't master. We know our problem is around research methods because we don't have the foundation, but we sacrifice everything at the altar of being seen to be efficient. Tumemaliza hiyo kosi bwana. In fact, I'm very worried. I'm just waiting for those students to start doing their proposals. I shudder. And yet I was part of that process, and I'm guilty of the same. So I keep asking, why can't Daystar think differently? Why can't we give more courses, break up all the research courses, and give them the intensity they deserve? Then we shall be strong and Kenya will be strong. So when you say proposal writing, obviously it is weak. That's why you'll have a university. One of the big pluses of a university like Moi is that they win every research proposal that comes. We won the Center of Excellence for the World Bank. We won the proposal for supplying computers to schools. They won the proposals with IBC because they have a pool of researchers. It doesn't matter what is happening wrong with the university, but the pool of researchers are so definite on what they want to get, and they get it. This has been my cry. We will not translate Daystar into a research university until we are thorough and grounded in research methods. So I would even like to look at the undergraduate programs. That's where it starts. Can we look at our undergraduate programs and see, are my law students grounded in research? Even as they go to write their project, how good are they? And it starts in the first year. You saw our former AG. I was emphasizing that. I hope some of you got what I was saying. You don't become an A student in fourth year. No, you become an A student in first year. And then tenaciously want to become throughout. So I hear you. I was wondering, why did you tag in HIV/AIDS to your presentation? Why? And I'm hoping everybody was asking. And me, I have almost seen why you are bringing it in, to raise certain salient points about research. And when you are allowed to define the parameters yourself, you can overcome obstacles like HIV and AIDS. And then, for some people it's a statistic. For some of us it isn't. I lost my own daughter to HIV and AIDS. So I know, it's not a statistic. So can we wake up in this research process? The young students who are, and even my colleagues, there is a lot we have to do in terms of research outputs, but we must be grounded in theory. If you are not, then you are just like the Juakali mechanic. When the car has stalled, he starts off with shaking wires and then doing this and that, and you keep moving around and removing, and even saying maybe it is the petrol, opens the tank. But somebody who has theory, you will ask you what happened, and you'll explain, and they know where they're going. So thank you so much. Let's appreciate her with the Nyayo claps. You know I'm a Nyayo orphan. So as she comes for the small gift, makofi moja, mbili, tatu. Asante sana. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really don't want to ask you where you come from, because I suspect I've been to your home, but I'm not sure. Not looking for you, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, it's been quite an engaging morning. If you've not been challenged, there's a problem somewhere. Tumejua hatujui. We've been called to make some serious contributions. Knowledge is the current currency. If you do not have new knowledge, scientific knowledge, we know things, but how relevant that is another question. So, it's the new currency. You need to be innovative. Our VC has challenged we be uploading, not just downloading, ladies and gentlemen. So we thank all of our presenters so far. We shall take a short break, ladies and gentlemen. We will start with a group photo right outside this building, right? And you want to be seen with the crowd that is carrying knowledge. If you're knowledgeable, if you want to be with us, you don't want to miss this train. So we shall make our way out to the front of the building to take a group photo. And then we shall have a 10-minute break before we come back to listen to our third keynote speaker, our own VC. He has already trailblazed in the direction we are going for the theme of this particular conference, and therefore I shall request that we honor our speakers by coming back promptly. So in the next 10 minutes, let us be seated right back here. We shall hear from our third speaker and then have a plenary session for all the ideas that you've been collecting, all the questions that you've had so far as they've spoken to us. You will have the opportunity to raise, to contribute, and have a discussion once we listen to the third speaker, that is our VC. So let's take a break and let's go outside. Our guests will lead us, and then we shall have the photo and come back promptly after 10 minutes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. See you back here shortly. As we walk out, you will find washrooms on the left as you face